In the early 1900s, navies around the world called for a warship that not only could fire weaponry from ships, but also carry and launch aircrafts from the deck of the ship. Through its development, numerous navies discovered that the aircraft carrier indeed could fit their need for advanced weaponry in wars around the globe. Towards the end of World War I, navies around the world began to consider the potential use of aircrafts as scouts for their warships. In 1909, the French inventor Clement Ader published L'Aviation Militaire. In this book, he described an airplane-carrying vessel is indispensable. These vessels will be constructed on a plan very different from what is currently used. First of all, the deck will be cleared of all obstacles. It will be flat, as wide as possible without jeopardizing the nautical lines of the hull, and it will look like a landing field. The structure of the ship would be able to operate airplanes at sea off of a flat flight deck, an island superstructure with deck elevators and a hangar bay. In both the United States and Great Britain, numerous experiments were tested to see whether Adder's concept could be developed practically. On November 14, 1910, Eugene Ely was the first pilot to launch an airplane from a stationary ship. On January 18, 1911, Ely became the first pilot to land on a stationary ship. As carriers began to be constructed, different problems and technical issues were encountered. After the first flight in November 14, 1910, pilot Eugene Ely was not able to land on the deck of the ship because the plane had no way of stopping after it were to land. Ely was forced to land beside the ship. The initial carriers were built with cranes that were used to haul up planes after they landed near the ship. Because of this, landing took too long. It was not until pilot Eugene Ely developed a way to stop the planes. He attached a hook at the end of the plane and a bag of sand connected with rope. When the plane came to land, it would hook onto the rope, increasing the drag of the plane. This worked fine until jet planes were developed. With new inventions, there are always setbacks. New jets were faster and couldn't be stopped by just rope and sandbags. Many accidents occurred because the sandbags could not hold back the new jets. With technology nowadays, planes stop with ease while landing on carriers. With the invention of jets, planes were heavier and required more push in order to be launched from the aircraft carriers. The US Navy experimented with other power sources and models, including catapults that utilized gunpowder and flywheel variations. On December 14, 1924, a Martin MO-1 observation plane, flown by Lieutenant L.C. Hayden, was launched from the USS Langley, using a catapult powered by gunpowder. Following this launch, this method was used aboard both cruisers and battleships. Up to and during World War II, most catapults were hydraulic. In the most current carriers around the world, catapults are usually propelled hydraulically or by steam. Aircraft carriers proved to have significant impacts on battles during World War II. During the Battle of Midway, the Carrier Strike Force created a turning point in the Pacific War. Because of the carriers, the Allied forces were able to win key battles that would lead to the victory of World War II. Navies explored ways to change their technology within the carrier. With World War II, the aircraft carrier became a clear choice to serve as the main capital ship with a naval task force. This war was the only war in history where battles occurred between groups of carriers. World War II saw the first use of radar in combat. It brought the first naval battle in which ships of both sides never engaged in direct combat, to sending aircrafts to make attacks as seen in the Battle of Coral Sea. The aircraft carrier demonstrated its ability to strike decisively at enemy ships out of sight and range of surface vessels. The carrier's ability to project power beyond the airplane's own range made it of vital importance to fleet operations. Had there been no carriers in World War II, the battleships would have been the most powerful warships as it had been in World War I, when airplanes were most often floatplanes operated by the gun-armed warships serving as eyes of the fleet. In the Battle of Coral Sea in May 1942, the United States and Japanese navies engaged with one another without ever sighting ships. Aircraft carriers have evolved since their start in the early 20th century, from wooden vessels used to deploy balloons to nuclear-powered warships that carry dozens of aircraft. From their first use as balloon carriers during the American Civil War to today's nuclear-powered jet-bearing giants, carriers have extended the range of aircraft and thus have given more flexibility as to where to carry out their tasks, whether reconnaissance or bombing. The principal problem in their development was devoting as much of an uninterrupted flight deck to handling, taking off, and landing while allowing the ship to maintain sea-keeping qualities. The overall construction of carriers progressed from the British ones during World War I and into the interwar classes. Some were smaller due to treaty limits, and culminated in the Essex carriers. Post-war, carrier development became linked to the need to deliver nuclear weapons, which resulted in the development of the USS United States. After her cancellation and the outbreak of the Korean War, the supercarrier was finally built with the launch of the USS Bristol. Carriers were an integral part in both the planning for and later execution of war operations against Japan during World War II. They engaged other battle fleets in contesting sea control, as well as providing air support for every amphibious assault during the Pacific. Battleships and cruisers could only carry a few planes, so the aircraft carrier was also seen as a source of additional airplanes to replace those shot down or out of fuel, as well as a place for airplanes to land away from the battle for repair and refueling. With the exploration of the carriers, they have become the centerpiece of the United States battle fleets and naval combat ability. In its encounter, the carrier proved to offer navies more flexibility and increase the ability to project power to any corner of the earth.